What's up? A while back I posted a video about the do's and don'ts of Cuba. Things have changed since then. There's things that haven't changed, and there's things that people thought have changed but really haven't. So I've gotten a lot of comments from people wanting me to do an updated version. Americans can now legally travel to Cuba. That's old news. You can now go to Cuba for family visits, official business of the US government, foreign governments, and certain intergovernmental organizations, journalistic activity, professional research and professional meetings, educational activities, religious activities, public performances, clinics, workshops, athletic and other competitions or exhibitions. Support of the Cuban people. Activities of private foundations or research or educational institutes. Export, import, or transmission of information or informational materials. Certain authorized export transactions. First off, I said in the last video you can't get money out there. And if you live in the United States, that's true. You can't use American credit cards and you can't access US banks. The money you bring is the money you have, and if you run out, straight to the embassy. When we went, there was no American embassy, so if we ran out of money, we'd just be screwed. We actually did run out of money, and I ended up having to sell my tablet, my phone, and myself to an older Cuban woman, just for the night. So I'd recommend bringing at least $1,000 for every week you're there in cash. You're probably not going to spend that much, but it's always good to be on the safe side. When we went, there was a $25 tax to leave Cuba, but as of 2015, that's being absorbed into your plane ticket. It was also very difficult to access the internet. There was no Wi-Fi, and you can only use the internet at some of the biggest hotels in the city. And there are periods where the internet just liked to go down for hours at a time. We did find an internet cafe where you had to pay, wait in line for 45 minutes, then you could use the internet for a 15-minute time slot. The internet's becoming more available down there, but if connectivity is really important to you, maybe go to Cuba at a time when it's not as important to you. People also wanted to know more about the passport stamp situation. Before relations started warming between the US and Cuban governments, it was illegal for Americans to go to Cuba. More specifically, illegal for Americans to spend money down there. So before then, if you went back through US Customs and you had a Cuban stamp in your passport, you can get questioned, interrogated, searched, or even fined. So when you went through Cuban Customs, they wouldn't stamp your passport. So even though this potentially causes problems, there are stupid people who actually have them stamp their passport because they think it's cool. I had them stamp my passport because I thought it was cool, and I felt really cool about it. Now I don't feel so cool anymore because it's legal to go to Cuba. On the last video I said Cubans aren't allowed to leave Cuba, and a lot of people didn't know what I was talking about. People are saying Cuba's open now, Cubans can travel freely, and that's completely true. Except for the fact that it's completely not true. I'll explain. January 14, 2013, the Cuban government lifted some of the restrictions preventing Cubans from leaving Cuba. If you Google it, it says, yeah, Cubans are allowed to travel freely. But when we went down there in 2014, no one down there said that they could travel or leave Cuba. We spoke to almost every Cuban we met on the matter, and they all said the same thing, including one of the biggest boxers in Cuba who was only out of the country one time. And that was to fight in Russia, where he says he was heavily chaperoned. Research on the matter points to the fact that normal wages down there are between $10 and $20 a month, making travel financially impossible. However, when speaking to the Cuban people, they say even if they had the money, they couldn't get permission to leave the country. So if you're originally from Cuba or you know someone who successfully left Cuba, please leave me a comment on the matter. On the last video I said, don't avoid people because you think they're trying to sell you something or you think they're trying to ask you for money. When you walk down the street, people will come up to you, they'll want to talk to you, they'll want to know where you're from. Cubans are not allowed to leave Cuba, so when they see people from other countries, they want to talk to them, they'll want to find out where you're from, plus everyone there is really friendly. So when you're walking down the streets in Cuba and you hear, my friend, go talk to the person. And this has actually caused a mixed reaction. There's people who agree with me, there's people who don't agree with me, and this guy decided to get really mad about it. And yeah, there are my friend guys, new term of the year. Who wanted to solicit, sell us stuff, find some way to get money, but a lot of people legitimately just wanted to know where we were from, what we planned to do in Cuba, and there was those kids who got me to squeeze that strength grip that electrocuted me. And the funny part is we actually did end up hanging out with some of the people who were originally trying to solicit us, and we had a good time. They're good people, we didn't get robbed, scammed. And back to what Angry Guy said, yes, it is important to keep your wits about you, but in Cuba it's not something you have to worry about. We weren't careful at all. We got pretty f***ed up a few times. And by a few times, I mean every night. And most days. And sometimes in the mornings. I also wanted to go back in on something I said on the last video. If you want good, authentic Cuban food, the food out on the street and in small restaurants really sucks. What you'll find is tons of cheese pizza, grilled cheese sandwiches, and burgers that consist of the bun, a beef patty, a piece of ham, and mustard. Mustard and the cheapest bread you could possibly... It's definitely edible, especially if you're drinking fine Cuban rum all day. So if you want authentic Cuban food, pay the casa you're staying at and join them for dinner. There's also small restaurants people have in their homes, or you can make some Cuban friends. So leave me a comment, let me know if you have any questions, let me know if I left anything out, let me know if there's anything you wanted me to talk about. Give this video a thumbs up, leave me a comment, and hit the subscribe button.